This is Kingdom Warrior. I'm your host, Andrea Beam, and every episode we bring you powerful conversations with bold business owners, passionate young adults, and overcomers who have turned their toughest battles into breakthrough moments. We dive into practical business strategies, leadership insights, and the mindset that fuels resilience, so that you can overcome obstacles and scale your calling with confidence. If this speaks to you, hit subscribe now on your favorite platform so you never miss an episode, and share it with someone who needs a shot of bold faith and courage today. Welcome to today's episode of Kingdom Warrior. I am stoked to be able to introduce all of our listeners today to Lucas Sherraden. Lucas and I have just recently gotten a chance to get to know each other just a little bit better, and I cannot wait for you guys to hear this conversation from today. Before we jump into our conversation, I want to give a quick shout out to Fitness Experience in Albany, Oregon. They are a local gym, not one of the big chain gyms. They're just a local gym here that provides an awesome place to go and get your fitness in check. So make sure to check them out. And we're going to jump into today's episode with Lucas. So just so you guys have a little bit of background with Lucas, he is the author of The Uncaged Leader, which is currently in pre-order status. So make sure you run over to his website and get that pre-ordered. It is uncagedleader.com. And you guys, he's also working with Place. So many of you guys may or may not know that our real estate company, the Beam team, partnered with an organization called Place. And Lucas is in charge of leadership development with Place, doing behavioral styles, leadership coaching, training. He does it all, right? So, and then you guys, he was a pastor for 20 years. Yeah, 20 years. Started at the age of 16, which is insane to me that you had that calling at 16 years old, and then planted a church in Houston, Texas. There you go. Those 3 bullet points. If you guys can just imagine what today's conversation is going to go in so many directions, I'm sure. So Lucas, welcome.
Thanks so much for having me, Andrea.
This is going to be so fun. So I want to ask, when you said that you started at the age of 16, pastoring, what did that look like in your life? Because I don't talk to a lot of people that say they started pastoring at 16 years old.
Yeah. So I was fortunate enough to grow up in the Kansas City area, still live here now. I moved back to the area after being in a couple of different places. And I was involved with a ministry that had these local clubs these Bible clubs. And I was a Christian trying to find other Christian friends. And I thought I was the only Christian in the world. And no teenagers were ever Christians, because most of my friends in school were not real faith-based. And as a couple kids were carrying their Bibles to school. And so I started getting involved with this ministry called Kansas City Youth for Christ. And when I was 16, accidentally got pushed into speaking at one of those clubs. Turned out it went really well. I was not really good at speech classes, but for whatever reason, when I stood up and spoke, it resonated with the crowd. People responded to invitations. And then the executive director of Kansas City Youth for Christ heard me preach and put a microphone in my hand and put me in front of a TV camera and said, "You got a gift, boy, go preach." And, it's interesting. It's funny looking back on that. I had no business speaking in front of a couple thousand teenagers. It was just like, wow, I loved God, and I was, pretty much raised as a Christian, but spotlighting a microphone with a senior in high school probably should have spent some more time developing character.
Well, I'm sure that God used it either way, right? I mean, that's pretty impressive to be handed a microphone and told, here, we want you to go speak.
I'm really thankful that ministry's TV station had a fire, because we had a 2-hour live call-in television show that I hosted. I am so glad that the place burned down, because if that showed up on YouTube, I would be horrified. It was probably terrible. But, here's the thing, is that even looking back at the arrogance of being a teenager is kind of the theme of my story, is God uses broken people, period. And the moment that I feel like my brokenness, my flaws, my impatience, my whatever it is, my inexperience in a certain field disqualifies me, I sell God short. Because good grief, God used the jawbone of a donkey in the Old Testament to defeat a Philistine. So he could use pretty much any jackass to do his sorry, can I say that on a Christian podcast? So he could use pretty much anybody to.
Yeah.
And so that's That's the thing. I remember hearing early on that if I will do all that's possible naturally to excel at whatever it is I do, God will add the super to my natural. However, I have to understand that at the end of the day, man, God could use all of our brokenness. And so I look back on my journey, I was like, wow, how in the world did that happen? It was like,
How do I
that
do
was a
that?
God thing. Yeah.
Do you feel like there was any point during that period of those early years where do you feel like you were being like digging your heels in the sand, or do you feel like you were fairly obedient to what was God was calling you to do?
That's such a good question. And if I'm being really transparent, it was something I found out I was actually good at. I basically was a nerd, and I carried my Bible to school, which would get you not invited to any parties, and I wasn't popular. And then I found when I stood on stage that, oh my gosh, I actually was good at this and it flowed and people liked me. And so I think God used even my own sense of needing to be accepted and needing to have approval. I think he used that broken part of me to confirm that you've got a gift, use it. And it's uncanny. It's like if I remember speech classes. I was horrible at that, and I wasn't good at debate classes. And yet, you put me in front of a crowd with a microphone, I could capture a crowd, which was uncanny for me. And I don't know that. Like I go back and still, even to this day, it's like, was that a calling, or was it? I just found out I was good at, and I liked applause and attaboys and what have you. But regardless, God knows our language, and He puts us in situations to accomplish His purpose. Yeah.
What was the hardest thing that you had to overcome during that period? Those younger years, right? When you were, maybe those first 10 years, let's say. What was the scariest thing that you encountered that you had to face?
Well, that's a really great question. I think those are early days. If you go first 10 years, so you take me to 26, I got married, was starting to work in churches, trying to figure out how am I going to take this desire to speak and impact the world and take care of my family at the same time, take care of me as a human being. Not all that glitters on stage is gold. And I think we've seen that in the church world, especially that you could be
Yeah.
immensely gifted and anointed in front of a crowd and yet have huge character flaws.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, I wanted to make sure that the people who knew me the best respected me the most, and that's been the hard journey. So I think the scariest thing was to realize that when you come off a stage, who are you then?
Hmm.
Because I don't know about you, I've been backstage at major conferences, even in the business world. I was very involved with the Keller Williams world. You get off stages and you realize the person that you saw on stage wasn't the person behind stage, and
Yeah.
it's one thing for you to respect me, but I want the people that I go home to that see me in my fraudulent downtimes to respect me more than anybody ever would hear me speak or read a book or whatever. So that
Amen.
probably, I don't know if scary, but that was the hardest part.
Yeah. I think it's the whole premise of like, does your audio match your video? I think you've probably heard that I learned that first in the real estate world, but it very much transfers over to, church and to the spiritual part of your life, because you can easily post things on social media, right? You can put things out there, and yet you can on the weekend show up as a completely different person, to other people in your life, and so your audio doesn't match your video. That's kind of the meaning behind that. And so I feel like, I mean, I know exactly what you're referring to and what you're talking to, because and I think that's where a lot of um the stirring up of, all these big mega church pastors right now, there's, lots of controversy around that. And I think that's a huge part of it, right? Is the audio didn't match the video.
And I think, Andrea, one of the things in business and faith, and I don't put a distinction between the two. They're one and the same in my mind, in my world. But I think that people have to understand that our character could ruin in a moment what it takes years for our skill and anointing to build.
No joke. One moment.
Yeah, and so just one bad decision, one indiscretion. I'm not throwing stones at anybody. I've made a litany of idiotic, stupid, bad decisions coming from my brokenness, and I have to steward that. And it's like, and even like I have great sympathies for the guys that are being exposed, because I think the most dangerous place in America right now is the Christian pastor, because they're paid to be perfect, which is a making of societal Christianity, and it's not biblical Christianity. Nobody's paid to be perfect. And so I would say that the most dangerous place is to be there because where does a pastor go if he's struggling with X, Y,
Right.
and Z?
Right.
And is he safe with where he won't lose his income and his job and his platform, but he could actually work on his inner heart issues? My
Mhm.
gosh, that's a huge mission field. And that's a whole nother conversation that we could probably go off into. I
For
don't judge
sure.
them because it's like, and I also will not say, and I hate this saying that Christians say, and if you say it, I apologize, but I hate this saying. When people say, except for the grace, there go I, because
Um,
what that says to the person who just fell is, oh, great. The grace of God was good enough to keep you from it. But the grace of God, I'm so messed up. The grace of God wasn't even good enough for me.
yeah. Yeah. I really like that you brought that up because I've often talked about putting people up on a pedestal and how dangerous that is. And it doesn't matter if it's a pastor, if it's a sports player, if it's you put they're human, right? Like they're human. And we have to remember that whether it's a political person or it doesn't matter. Like we put these people up on pedestals and then the danger to that I feel like is when a fall, occurs from one of those poles, unfortunately, it has an impact where, um, I think people's relationship with God is damaged, right? And it's because they blame God, not the person or the situation or the environment or whatever. It kind of goes into a whole nother category, which would be a rabbit trail, the whole topic of being hurt by the church, right? And the church is made up of humans and we are all broken. And it makes me sad. It like makes me really, really, really sad because I hear it quite often in conversations with people that I have coffee with or just random conversations. And they'll tell me their stories about how they were hurt by the church in some way, shape, or form. And it breaks me because it was their relationship with Jesus, like, they gave up on Jesus, but it wasn't Jesus that hurt them, right? Like, anyway, I we could go down a whole rabbit trail.
Well, and just as a former pastor, I've been hurt by the church, and I have been a leader who has inadvertently hurt people because of my own brokenness. And that's where it's like, I think, I was thinking even about the context of this conversation you and I were going to have is Jesus said there was going to be one thing that we would be known by, and it's not our righteousness. It's not our capacity to argue a political position. It's this one thing. And I think the church is known for a lot of things other than the fact of how we love one another. And I think whether it's a church hurting other Christians or it's Christians hurting a pastor or whatever it is, I think love conquers all. And if we could excel in love and not a weak layover, I mean, love is strong and love is
Yeah,
a force. Love is
yeah,
powerful. Love speaks truth.
yep,
And I wish we would be. I don't know that if you take a poll of the American society and say what are Christians known for, I don't know that love would rank at the top, and that we absolutely must change that.
yeah. No, I completely agree. I love that you clarified that I think love, the topic of love has definitely been contorted in a worldly view because it's not when you break it down in the Bible and you look at like the actual study of words, like, the Hebrew and Greek and then the different definitions there are or meanings, right? That love is has so many different definitions when you look at that. And not definitions, that's not the right word I'm trying to say. There's just more words for it, right? Than just love. And the American language is just one word. But where I was going with that is just I'm glad that you brought that back to like love is also telling people the truth. Like love is holding people accountable. Love is also being willing to have difficult conversations with people that you care about. And I think that as a society, we've gotten away from that. And again, it goes back to, and we started talking about this before we went live, but it comes back to fear.
Yeah, I agree. Totally agree.
When you were pastoring, did you ever encounter fear in that realm? And what did that look like?
Oh my gosh, yes. Starting a church, or I think, how are we going to pay for this? And I went to a school where the president of the school was very aggressive in fundraising, and I didn't really like that. And so, how do we raise funds for this? And then I think every pastor has a fear that people won't show up the next week, and will attendance go down? Will we not make an impact? Will we make bad decisions? And so, I think fear is a factor whether I think fear is a human factor. It's better whether you're preaching or it's selling real estate. I think fear is a real thing that we must absolutely face, because fear is just faith that the enemy's going to work things out together instead of God working things out together, right?
So I have a question for you, and this may be an interesting question given that you're a pastor. I feel like that seems like maybe there's an obvious answer, but I want to ask this question of you. So, still on the topic of fear, and when you think of fear, did you ever experience fear around sharing the gospel? Was that ever a fear for you?
No, I don't experience that fear because it's very relational for me. It is not transactional. I think that the time that quote sharing the gospel becomes a fear-based thing is when it becomes a transaction, where
Hmm.
I'm forcing you into a decision. See, I've got a really different theology about sharing the gospel. I think Jesus told us to go make disciples of the nations. He didn't tell us to go get people to say a prayer or
Yeah.
make people come to church.
Amen.
And so I think that when I work with powerful people in the real estate space, I'm making disciples. When I go teach next week, I'm going to Austin and San Antonio to teach next week. I don't know what the faith background of the rooms are going to be, but I'm making disciples of that nation. I think that there's no fear in that at all. And I think the only time fear creeps in, it's kind of like lead generation in real estate. The only time fear creeps in is when we're expecting a result. And if I don't think I'm going to get a result, then I get fear and I create hypothetical situations in my mind before it even happens. If I am here to love people, about live my message more than I shout my message,
Yeah.
and I excel at love, and I leave God to do the rest because it's not my job to convict the world. God does that. My job is to love people, and speak truth, eh, detached from the result. There is no fear in that, right?
I'm so glad you brought that up. That was literally my next question was, how does that relate now to you not being a pastor, but being in this leadership role with place in the real estate world? Would the answer be any different? And I think you just kind of answered that, but I love that it's really no different for you.
No, like this morning, I've hosted a podcast. I've been on a Zoom. I've taught. We're always making. If we understand the Great Commission, we're always making disciples. And here's what I think that's why I don't put a line between the sacred and the secular. I think it's all one. I think that when I mow my grass, that's just as spiritual as if I'm fasting and praying. It's like wherever I am, there is God, and God is with me, and God is in me, and I am in Him. So we're all one. And so why would I put a line of demarcation between, well, this is holy and this is sacred? I mean, this is secular.
Mhm.
I think, like, I love this conversation. I rarely get to have a pastor type of conversation, right? And so, because most of my time is on lead generation and profit and loss statements
Yeah.
and recruiting and what have you. So,
Yeah.
however, if I understand that I wake up every day and I say this, that the reality in the Bible says that you are, as a Christian, you are right now, not present tense, not future tense, you are right now currently seated with Christ in the heavenly places. That means everywhere your foot steps, heaven invades that situation by default, but
Let's
period,
go.
hard stop. So it's like, so do I go to church or do I take church with me? When I go to the Southwest airline, am I bringing heaven with me, or does heaven, I don't need to pray heaven come down. And I understand the prayers, and I think we need to quit theologically picking apart worship songs. They're a form of art. Like, if you think about that, like, I see these theologians yelling out about worship songs. It's like, they would have had a problem with the psalmist who said, blessed is the man who takes your children and bashes their head against the rocks.
Mm.
That's in the Psalms,
Yeah.
because it's just an expression. At that moment, the psalmist just felt this urge and emotion. That's worship, is my emotions, which are not theologically pure all the time. And so, which was a whole nother tangent, but I just think that we have to understand, Andrea, as Christians, we're called to follow Jesus, and there's not an on and off switch with that.
Yes.
There's not a,
Yeah.
I go to a holy place and I go to a secular place. That when I'm on a Southwest airline flight, I am bringing heaven there. When I go teach, I'm bringing heaven there. When I go to church, I'm bringing heaven. When I go home tonight, I'm going to bring heaven there. When I veg out in front of a Netflix, I bring heaven there. Everywhere I go. So as a business professional, this is what's really cool. There is no poverty in heaven. There is no brokenness in heaven. And if we're praying the Lord's Prayer on earth as it is in heaven, everywhere I go, I bring all of heaven's solutions with me. I'm unstoppable, invincible, and every place is blessed by the fact that we just stepped into it.
Let's go. My gosh. I'm going to repeat something you just said because I want everybody to hear this. You just said something really profound. There should not ever be an on and off switch,
I mean, I guess the off switch theoretically to our physical life is when I stop breathing or my heart stops beating. But the truth is, wherever I go, there I am. So wherever I am, all of who I am comes with me. And if I see my identity rooted in a biblical concept of spiritual identity, there's no off button on that.
right?
Now, do I, but be very clear, do I have fraudulent moments? Do I have moments where I don't make great decisions, where I act outside of my identity? Do I mess up? Do I get angry? Do I get bitter? Do I do stuff that I deeply, deeply regret later? Absolutely, 100%. And really thankful that God excels at using broken people to accomplish his purpose.
Yeah. Yeah. That grace is huge because we're all going to falter. I mean, we're all going to misstep. It's just a given, no matter how hard we try, right? And it says it's not by works alone, right? Like we could never do enough works to do that. We're going to fall. It's just, like I said, it's just a given. What, in your business life now, I want to kind of talk to the audience that own businesses that are, running in a space of, this is a platform for them, whether they realize it or not. How do you, and I'm going to pull a little bit on not just your pastoral skills, but also your leadership training that you do. Talk to me a little bit about leaders handling that scenario of, well, I own a business and I have umpteen employees, whether it's one employee or it's 100, and there's maybe confusion for them around how they handle their faith in that space. I know for my real estate company, outside of Kingdom Warrior, like our number one value that we list at the top of our values is that God is at the core. And we're very open about that when people are interviewing with us. And right, wrong, or indifferent, I don't require that people believe the exact same way that I believe to work with my company. But I do require that they understand that this is what my company is built on, and I'm not going to change that for anything. I just don't want somebody to be blindsided and say, well, you didn't tell me. But what is your advice for people that maybe are struggling with that? Does that
I
make
love
sense?
Yeah, totally. I think that, Andrea, that number one, we have to know what it is specifically God's called us to do.
Hmm.
And so to the business person out there that's the CEO of a company, has 100 employees, or a manager that says, man, I don't see any connection. If that's what God's called you to, like for me, I have been in rooms that would never recognize me as Pastor Lucas, but recognize me because I got massive results in companies I turned exponentially increased profitability and stuff like that. And I think that there's a verse in Luke chapter 2, 42 that says Jesus grew in wisdom and stature. And then it goes on to say Jesus also grew in favor with God and favor with man. I think as a rule, sometimes because we're insecure, Christians who are insecure feel an incessant need to prove the world to be pagans and heathens and to flaunt their Christianity in such a way that
Hmm.
they're not going to steward the favor with God. I have no issue telling people what my faith is, but I also don't have to lead with that, because in my mind, I'm going to lead with love. I'm going to lead with kindness. I'm going to
Hmm.
lead with a culture of honor and respect where I honor everybody. And I love people. I may hate behavior, but I love people. And I can see past people's behavior to see who they are, right? They're all
Yeah.
created in the image of
Yeah.
God. And Jesus died as equally for somebody that I don't like as somebody that I do like. And so I think that for the business person out there is get real clear on your calling, because there are Christians that are out there that are supposed to be very out front with their Christian faith and lead with that. I
Hmm.
think there's other situations where it's not that I'm hiding it, but Jehovah's Sneaky's at work.
Hmm.
Like, I don't know that Joseph went into Pharaoh and said, hey, Pharaoh, Pharaoh, hire me because I've got a relationship with the God of the universe. Joseph went into Pharaoh and said, hey, you got a famine coming. You better store up right now. And I've got
Hmm.
real answers. And I think it's kind of funny because if there's some context you could give that, like Joseph goes, and maybe there could be somebody, that you could appoint to be in charge of this. I don't know who that would be. Maybe somebody who can interpret dreams. I don't know. It's just like, he's like, I think I've got a good choice for you. But he didn't lead with Jehovah. He led with a solution. And I think that depending on your call, I think however love shows up, it shows up. And however truth shows up, it shows up. So I wouldn't struggle. Like if you're a manager of the Piggly Wiggly, excel at Piggly Wiggly, because work is worship. What you do is worship. How I treat somebody is worship. And if you have openings, walk through them. If God opens doors, walk through them. If you have the honor of starting a business and you say, you know what, I want my faith to be front and center on this business because I'm going to be very overt and direct, go for it. Just follow your calling and don't judge somebody else for have a different calling than you do, right? I
Mhm.
know some of my charismaniac friends is just like, man, you got to be out there and you got to have your Jesus t-shirts on. And I'm all cool if that's your calling. But I know this, that some of the people that I've worked with, if I came in with a Jesus t-shirt, they would never listen to me. And if they never listened to me, I could never impact them. And I am so tired and I feel very, very passionate about the fact that as a church, we tend to sequester ourselves and we add more water to the ocean instead of taking it to the places that need the water.
Mhm.
Light happens better on the backdrop of darkness than light happens on the backdrop of light. So if I shine my light in church, it's on the backdrop of light. It does not stand out. But if I go in the midst of darkness where people do not know Jesus, my light stands out without me saying, here's my Jesus bumper sticker.
Oh my gosh, I love this. So, a little bit unrelated, but still related. I'll bring it full circle. We were having a conversation in our team meeting the other day about being able to connect with consumers, and I have this pet peeve about real estate agents posting, "Hey, I'm a real estate agent. Call me if you need to buy, sell, or invest." And to me, it's lands very flat, right? Thousands and thousands of realtors are out there, posting that. And so we were talking about having where the connection is when you're able to connect with people at their level of pain, right? Like where they're suffering, where they're hurting, where they're, and we were speaking in the real estate perspective, of course, for that team meeting, but you can very much take that same, I don't know what you would call it, that same framework, I guess, and put that into this space that we're talking about of being able to bring light into the darkness. Because if you can't meet people where they are, if they don't feel like you can understand what they're dealing with, what they're going through, then I feel like the message sometimes falls flat.
That's right. Yeah.
And you have
Well,
to,
you think about Jesus's model of ministry. Jesus
yeah,
modeled that.
yes, 100%.
He wouldn't have posted and say, "Hey, listen, if you need a savior, click here."
Oh,
That's not what Jesus would have done. He said, "Oh, you're blind? Let me take care of your blindness. Oh, you're hungry? Let me feed you. You can't walk? Let me heal you.
yeah.
Let me give you oh, you're hopeless? Let me give you hope. Oh, you feel like the Pharisees have cast you out and you can't access God? I'm going to give you access." Jesus met people at their pain points, not like I think sometimes we start with our position and, "Hi, I'm a real estate agent. Please let me know if I can help you." I think we do that as Christians. "Hi, I'm a Christian." And honestly, it's fairly repulsive to the world who is
Yeah.
hurting and
Yeah.
desperately to be loved. And instead of loving people, we're convincing people. And God's job is to convince people. My job is to love
Yes. Oh my gosh, you're dropping so many nuggets on here. I'm gonna have to go back and re-listen to this myself
them.
because this is so good. The convincing people. So, when I was like 12, I wanted to be a missionary, so bad, and we don't have time today to go into my testimony, but I at 16 ended up walking away from God for a lot of years, and then 5 years ago, completely full circle, came back. He got a hold of me, in a as a dramatic fashion as I walked away from him. Like it was just this full circle thing. Anyway, I remember thinking like I'm scared to have conversations with people around God because I felt like I had to convince them of God, right? Like I have to convince you. I have to debate you. Not even debate. It was like I need to always have the right answer to whatever you're going to throw at me. And for a long time I battled with that, with that fear. I think it was trying to remember who it was I was listening to. It was a podcast I was listening to where they were talking about this very topic, and they were discussing how it really isn't your job to convince them. It isn't your job to argue them. It isn't that isn't your job, right? It's what you're just describing. Your job is to love them, to meet them where they're at, to show them I think through action, not just words. And that changed my whole perspective. Like the Holy Spirit's going to work through you. You don't need to know the answers. Like God has the answers. It's
Well,
not
it's what we
you.
tell our real estate agents when we train them. The most professional answer you can give is, "I don't know." It's the
Right.
same thing in Christianity. I don't know. Here's the thing that I want us to just think philosophically and theologically, that in the Garden of Eden, if we hold to what scripture talks about, there were two trees. and we ate from the wrong freaking, whoop, I just got balloons. We
We got
ate from the
balloons.
wrong, yeah, balloons, yay. We ate from the wrong tree. And because we ate from the wrong tree, of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, we go around saying, oh, this is good, this is bad. But what the cross did was restored us to the other tree, which is the tree of life. So all we're commissioned to do is not to say, are you a convert, not convert? Will you accept Christ or not accept Christ? All we're to do is to eat from the tree of life. That this is a good or evil. I just want to give life. I just want to give life. I just want to give life. And whatever that looks like, it looks like. And so for the sick person, I'm going to do everything I can to alleviate their sickness. I'm going to do everything to make
Yeah.
their life better. In business, for the broke person, I'm going to do everything I can for them to experience the provision of God through
Hmm.
wisdom of heaven, through wisdom and tactics that we've learned, because all truth is God's truth. The devil didn't create any truth. So if a businessman tells you something that works, the devil didn't create that.
Hmm.
All truth is God's truth. And so
Yeah.
I think that we have to understand that we as human beings were never designed to judge people to that, oh, this is a Christian, this is a not Christian. Oh, this is a person who needs Jesus, this is a person who doesn't need Jesus. We're designed to eat from the tree of life. Where can I go bring life? So when I walk into a room, when I walk out of it, do people feel the life of God? Do people feel the love of God? Do people experience that? Or do they say, gosh, that guy's a closed mind bigot?
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
There's a song, don't ask me who sang it. I'm horrible with band names and stuff. Like, this was like probably back in the 80s or 90s or something. And it wasn't even part of the song. It was like something that was said at the beginning before they started singing. And then it was like, that's what a unbelieving world finds so unbelievable, is like when Christians live for him on Sunday and then don't live for him the rest of the week. And I'm totally paraphrasing. I don't remember exactly the words to it, but I used to listen to that song when I was young, like as a teenager, and it's still burned in my brain that's what they find unbelievable, is when they don't feel or see, like you were talking about earlier, like that behavior.
Think about this is when I help somebody solve their real life issue, how apt are they to listen to why it works in my life? Versus if we're asking people to make the most intimately personal decision about their spirituality, and I'm a stranger that has no rapport over them and really doesn't care about any other part of their life, what kind of gospel is that? And so I'm going to go around every day and say, I am a blessing to the planet. Who can I be a blessing to right now? Who's in front of me right now? Who am I impacting right now? Who am I connecting with right now? And how do I be a blessing to them? And
Yeah,
I'm going to live the message more than I'm going to speak the message, because, you know, people, your walk talks louder than your talk talks all the time.
the time, all the time. Something you said earlier, a topic I kind of want to make sure we get time to spend time on, is you mentioned identity.
Yeah, that's a big
So
deal.
and there's probably a lot of different paths we could go down on this topic, but coming from someone who has, I've experienced a lot of tribulation over the last handful of years. One of the things I very much struggled with was my identity from so many different aspects, right? From major life changes, in a lot of major life changes in a very short order. How do you correlate someone's identity that I think it's so easy for us to wrap our identity up in everything but God, right? Our identity being in our friend circles, our identity being in our kids, our identity being in relationships or fitness, or our intense, focus is around our identity is wrapped up in all of that. How do you bridge that gap with people that maybe aren't seeing their identity for what it really is?
Yeah. Yeah, I think identity is one of those deeply programmed things into us, because we start like think about it, 5-year-old, 6-year-old kids. We ask them, who do you want to be when you grow up?
Hmm.
What a terrible question. Who do you want to be? And what we're saying is, what vocation would you like to go into? So we're programming people at a very early age to connect their identity with a vocation. We do that with wealth statuses. There's the rich and there's a poor, that becomes an identity. We do that with sexuality. We're raging about that debate in America. We're saying this is who I am, not what I do. When you make it who you are, that's an insult. I mean, it's just, you think about everything that we talk about and we debate about usually is when we've taken on what we do and we bring it as an identity.
Hmm.
And I think that, number one, I could teach pre-Christians and Christians alike about who they are. right? And I've spent so much work. I remember when I came out of ministry, Andrea, the next couple of years, I was
Mm.
depressed. I was,
Oh,
who
yeah.
am I now? I felt like I failed everything, felt like I failed my family, I felt like I'm failing myself. And now I'm selling real estate and I will never impact another person as long as I live because I'm just in the secular business world. And it's really like, wait a second, whoa, wait a second. Titles don't determine who I am. Net worth sheets don't determine who I am. I am who I am. And if I root that in a secular background, that's stronger than nothing. That's stronger than saying, it's like, yes, you're powerful. That's great. For me as a Christian, my power comes from somebody who is omnipotent, who has all power. I am a creator because my identity is I'm filled with the entire creator, the entire universe. He created zebras, he created protozoa. I mean, he created everything, right? And so I'm filled with that. So I think that there's like levels of truth. There's things that are true and there's things that are truer. That as a Christian businessman in the world, I spend a lot of times traveling right now teaching people who they are. How are you wired? And I tell people you're fearfully and wonderfully wired. Be who you are. Learn how to accentuate the strengths. Be that
Mhm.
identity, but it's not tied to what I do. And as a Christian, I think we should understand that we have an unfair advantage because we have the God who created everything inside of us. We have the God who provides everything inside of us. And honestly, we have the God who keeps everything together inside of us. And as a Christian, I think it's a totally unfair advantage that I honestly think Christians usually use their faith as an excuse to underachieve.
Oh gosh, yeah.
I mean, I remember I led a brokerage in the Kansas City area, and there was this brokerage close by that had it was very faith based, and they all flocked. They found out that I used to be a pastor, and they found out the little circles that I used to run in. So they all flocked. They left that brokerage and came to our brokerage, and that was a bad mistake on their part because what they would say is like, "Well, I don't want to lead generate. I just felt God leading me to do something different." I would say something like this: "I'm really confused then. You came to us because you felt like we had wisdom to give to you so you could succeed in the business world. So did God lead you here or did God lead you this morning? Because God's not going to be confused. He's not going to tell you two different things. Oh, there's more balloons.
You can balloons. I
No, I
don't know
feel
where
so,
that comes from.
I feel so festive. But to me, it's like, if you believe God led you here, God put me in your life to tell you to get off your rear end and go out there and lead
Yes.
generate because he didn't lead you to take the morning off. That was your laziness speaking.
Yes.
Don't use your faith to be lazy. I think if you put the name Christian on it, it had better be better than anything the world cranks out. I have this hallucination, Andrea, so indulge me if you would for a moment.
Yeah.
I wonder if musical breakthroughs were supposed to be given to the church, but because the church is lazy and hides behind their faith, God gave it to the Beatles. I wonder if technological breakthroughs
Mm.
were supposed to be given to the church, but because the church would rather sit around sing blessed assurance instead of standing on the promises, God says, you know what, I'm just going to skip that. I'm going to give us Steve Jobs and Bill Gates. I wonder if the greatest innovations in television were supposed to be given to the church, but he had to give it to Oprah because the church can't handle the greatness of impacting the world like God intends to do. So you can't prove me wrong, but you can't prove me right either. It's a hallucination I have.
Well, I don't think it's a hallucination. I love the contrarian nature behind it because I love challenging, concepts. But oh man, there was something you said that I wanted to touch on. Shoot, it went like in and out of my head. Hang on, I'll get it back. I know what it is. When you're talking about like even from the individual, take the church out of it for a minute. When you're talking about an individual and a gift that God gives you to use and to steward, I don't remember. I heard this on a stage somewhere. I wasn't even at a Christian conference. I think it was at a technology conference I was at. But there was a lot of faith-based speakers, so it was fantastic. And they were talking about the fact that when God gives you these gifts, if you choose not to use them, like if you're not stewarding those gifts, God will give them to someone else because God finds a
Beautiful.
way. God finds a way to use everything for good. But if you're going to squander it, if you're going to waste it, then he'll move it.
That's my point. It's like he will use the pre-Christian, unchurched person who has no grit for Christianity because God's going to advance his kingdom, period. So I
Period.
really do. I wonder if the greatest inventions and innovations of all of history were supposed to be given exclusively to God's people, but we weren't going to use that. So he gave it to somebody who would bring it to the earth. And so this is what I wake up every day is like, what great innovations, what great inventions are still to be created because I want to steward whatever God wants to send to me and not say, oh, wow, I can't do that because that's not inside the context of this little
Right.
box called
Yeah,
church.
yeah. Because we disqualify ourselves.
That's right. Because
Oh, I just
that's secular. That's not holy. It's like,
yeah.
I think that like the church's ideas about money and about wealth, I think that the love of money is more rampant in the poverty of the church than it ever is in the halls of the millionaires. Because in millionaires, it's just a game to them. It's just a thing. It's not a. But I think in the church, we just have so many skewed ideas of money and success that,
Yes.
like, if a pastor comes to your church next week in a Toyota Camry, we won't think anything about it. But if he rolls up in a Lamborghini, we wonder what he did wrong. Like, to us, that Lamborghini means something far more than it does to somebody who could actually afford a Lamborghini. And I want us to get free so that we can be massively successful and be a blessing
Right.
to the planet and alter the course of
Yeah.
human history every day.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure so back in my KW days when we were both at KW, they talked about a lot in one of the classes that we would take. It's like an 8-week course. Bold was the name of it. And there was like a whole section on money, right? Like there was a whole section on it. And even place goes, way, way, way deeper into that with the win, make, give and our business partner Ben, he's adamant about teaching people about money and wealth building. And I've never seen someone put their money where their mouth is more than Ben in that aspect, right? Like breaking these thermostats, if you will, of our comfort zone around money and our belief around it and our expectation around it. Something you said earlier when we think about the story I heard from a speaker about the power of expectation. So many of our situations, our scenarios that we're in them because that was where we expected to be. We may set a goal of, I want to earn $1 million this year, and I'm just picking some arbitrary number. But if my expectation doesn't meet that goal, if my expectation of myself, my identity of myself is not, that I'm not $1 million a year producer or earner, then that's never going to be a reality because the expectation is that I don't hit that. Right. And so it's almost like a form of self-sabotage, I guess, if
Well,
you will.
even a big part of what I wrote about in the Uncaged Leader is our programming and our belief systems and our mindsets and the perspectives that we bring on the world. Well, nothing means anything except for the meaning we attach. And as Christians, we just agree with the meaning God attaches. So that's all Christianity is like, okay, God, I'll quit attaching meanings that I would attach. I'm going to agree with you that the meaning that you attach, that this is good, this is bad, this is right. That's why God's the judge. I'm not the judge. I just agree with what his judgment is, right?
Mhm.
And so money is very much a neutral. Money in Hitler's hands looks a lot differently than money in Mother Teresa's hands. It's the same dollar,
Right.
but it just looks different. It's a neutral.
Yeah.
I think, and because there have been abuses where people have used money exclusively to hurt people and to advance their own agendas, I get some of the abuses about that, but I think that it's really necessary that somebody listening to this go make millions of dollars. The
Right.
devil's had the money long enough.
Yeah.
Might as well take it out of the
Yeah.
devil's hands and put it in your
Yeah.
hands
And
and
money
do
is
something
just a
good with it.
tool. It's a tool and it's money is good for the good that it can do.
Yeah,
But if
absolutely.
we all have small mindsets, if we all think small or stay comfortable and we don't push ourselves to build that wealth, to step into those callings, to however you want to view that, like if we aren't doing that, I feel like it's a travesty. You can do so much good with that, and yet your fear is keeping you from doing that, and it just
And of
is.
course, if you make money, enjoy it. Enjoy good
Yeah.
things. God surrounded us with good things. I mean, the scriptures that talk about enjoy the works of your hands, and I get that. And so I just remember, like when I started a business, I interviewed a lot of successful people. One of them was a lady named Mo Anderson, who is the
Yeah.
CEO of Keller Williams. Very loves the Lord, loves God. And I was interviewing her about money. And and then at the end of this interview, she goes, well, darling, she's from Oklahoma, darling, how much money do you want to make? And I said, well, Mo, honestly, I was a pastor for years. If I made $60,000, we live in a 2,100 square foot house, drive used cars. I've got 4 kids and a wife now. Bobby and I've been married for 37 years. It's like, I said, I don't need much. If I made $60,000 to care of me and my family, we'd be okay. And this is what her response was. Well, that is got to be the most self-centered, selfish, narcissistic thing I have ever heard anybody ever say, especially as a Christian. I said, what?
Say
I
that
was
again.
offended. I was like, oh my gosh, that was pretty harsh. But she goes, why in the world Would you make enough for money for you and your family when it's possible for you to make enough money for you, your family, and 1,000 others? Expand yourself so that you could take care of the needs of 1,000 families. I'm like,
Right?
wow, that just really reset how I looked at wealth building and success in business. And I know that when we fail, we always say, well, money's not everything. That's usually the language of a failure,
It's a
right?
cop out.
That's right. And
It's
so
a
it's
cop
like,
out.
no, it's not everything, but it is a measure. And so
Yeah.
I want the people listening to this to say, go forward and be prosperous. Go forward and
Yes.
make a lot of money. Go forward and you know what? If you feel like you can't handle it, give it away. I don't care. It's like I set all my financial goals, Andrea, every year by how much money do I want to give away this year? And then I just say, okay, that's a tenth of what I need to make. So if I want to give away $100,000 this year, I need to make 1 million. If I want to give away $250,000, I need to make 2.5 million.
Yes.
It's like giving dictates my financial goals.
Yeah.
And here's one thing I've noticed, whether they're Christians or pre-Christians, it didn't make a difference. When I did these wealth interviews, all of them, without exception, the first foundational building block of wealth building was generosity. All of them, without any exception. Even people I didn't really care for, they were amazingly generous with their money. They gave it away as a first act of wealth building because they see money as energy. It has to come in, it has to go. And the faster it can come in and go, the more
Yeah.
wealth that they can build.
Has to be bigger than you. I think, and our business partner Ben has talked about that before, right? Like you have to have something that pulls you into something that's bigger than you. It can't just be, I want a boat, right? Or I want a cool house, or I want a fancy car. Like that can't be the driving factor.
So, Andrea, with the Uncaged Leader, I kind of wrestled with this. Like, when you write a book, it's like, is this my ego speaking? Is this calling? Am I
Mm,
doing it for money? So I
sure.
took the money thing out of it. So 100% of the profits for that book are going to go to stopping sex trafficking because there are more people in slavery right now than at any other point in history, but we're not rioting in the streets about that. There are 14-year-old girls servicing 40-year-old white men, and nobody's nobody's picketing the White House about that. And so 100% of the book's proceeds I'm going to give them away. Just give it completely away. Now, here, get this. I need to sell 1 million copies of that book, not because of ego. I need to sell 1 million copies of that book because some 12-year-old girl needs somebody to come in and bust her out of slavery. That changes the scope of sales completely.
Everything. It changes everything. Yeah. The heart behind it, the reasoning behind it, the passion behind it, the cause behind it. It's not just, oh, I need to make $50,000 this year so that I
That's
can pay
right.
my bills.
And I understand the humility in that, but I tell you what, false humility is still self-centeredness. I would encourage people here. I'm not telling you that you have to make millions of dollars. I'm telling you, you have to make what God calls you to make. And if that desires in you, it did not come from nowhere.
Mhm.
It came from somewhere. And so I would just encourage my Christian business leaders, let's excel at this thing called business. Let's excel at wealth building. Let's excel at this. And let's really impact the world at a deep, deep, deep level.
Yeah, so good. So, as we kind of wrap up, because I feel like we could probably talk all day on so many of these
Yeah,
topics, and
absolutely.
and this has been fantastic, Lucas. I am just in awe of having you on here as a guest and digging into these things because there's just been so many aha moments. And if there was something that you felt maybe impressed upon your heart to share with the audience listening about anything that we've talked about today, or maybe a question that I have not asked you about, what do you feel like that would be potentially?
I think that what I've been thinking about a lot now is what does authentic power and freedom really look like as a Christian and
Mhm.
as a business person? And I think about the stories we tell ourselves about like money, about success. I think about the stories that we tell ourselves about marriage and about raising family. I think about the stories that we tell. Why do we like certain things? And I think real freedom comes in knowing that sometimes my preferences are making decisions for me and I'm not making the decision. So
Mm.
if you think about it, if I had 2 tubs of ice cream, I use this illustration a lot, and I say, Andrea, choose chocolate or vanilla. What would you choose?
Hmm, I like them both. Chocolate.
And why would you like them both, but why would you choose chocolate over vanilla?
More flavor.
Yeah. So did your preference make that decision or did you?
Totally my preference.
And that's how we live life. We're living life on autopilot where our preferences are making mindless decisions day in and day out. That's not
Yeah.
freedom. That's slavery. And what I would and I know that I can go down that rabbit hole pretty deeply on this, and that's the subject of the Uncaged Leader. That's the journey I went on to write that book. There are two keys that I think are really important. One is be really aware of the stories you tell yourself. Why do you believe what you believe? Why do you, emotions are really great triggers to show some of your programming. Where's autopilot making automatic decisions for me? And I'm not even deciding why
Yeah.
I went left instead of when I went right, where I'm just mindlessly doing things. And number two, I think that the church, and I think all business people, but because the nature of this podcast, I think the church can increase curiosity. So staying out of judgment before I label something good and bad. By the way, we're never called to do that. God does that. The Holy Spirit comes to convict of sin, righteousness, and judgment. That's not our job. We're not doing our job when we say that's right or wrong. That's God's job. My job is how do I bring life? And so I get really curious when you see evil, when you see something that isn't right, get curious. What else could this be? What could I do with this? What else could it mean? Mother Teresa looks at orphans and she doesn't say oh, sad thing. She goes, says, let me go save one of them. Oh, let me go take care of some. And she ended up in the world. And so I would say that I would leave the audience with get really free from your own repent, change the way you think, take another look at it from a different perspective. You have the perspectives you have because you're programmed.
Yeah.
Awesome. I'm aware and become curious. What else could this be? Because I believe that history is going to be written by people who could create new realities. And I think we have the creator of the universe living in us, and we are called by very nature of who we are to create new realities instead of riding the wave of what already is.
Yeah, and that takes intention. It takes a lot of intention. That's not something you're not going to override your subconscious. You're not going to override your programming like you said. Like you're not going to override that just by chance or by just hoping that it happens. Like you have to be so intentional about it. Awareness is the first thing, right? But past awareness, if you're not intentional about tackling those things head on, and that's why I said earlier like I love so much when we get contrarian topics because it's the very nature of challenging things, challenging thought processes around why we do something because we've always done it this way. And it's like, no, like we
I
have
think
to challenge that.
mindless leadership needs to go as well as mindless Christianity needs to go. We need to be
Amen.
mindful and be
Amen.
aware that I'm thinking this thought because I choose to, because it's in alignment with what I genuinely believe, not because it's what everybody else is saying.
Yeah. So good. So good. Oh my gosh. Lucas, thank you so much for being on here today. This has
Gosh, my
been
pleasure.
so good.
It's been
I
fun.
can't even. I'm going to have to go back and watch this all so I can watch it myself, take notes. There were so many good things you shared. I hope to be able to have you on here again at some point and
Anytime.
dig into topics, but
Anytime, my
much
friend.
respect for you. And I just, yeah, thank you again for being on today.
Thanks for having me.